Welcome back to another TradeOut's technical analysis tutorial. This is the Introduction to Fibonacci Volume 4. We're going to talk about Fibonacci expansions, give you another tool to add to your technical analysis tool belt when it comes to Fibonacci, and this is going to be a good one. That being said, let's get to the video. And as usual, here is the disclaimer. Please pause the video and read it in its entirety. All content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Nothing is financial advice. So what is a Fibonacci expansion? Well, it's a measured move of two important pivots that you select. And basically, you're targeting certain Fibonacci levels, which you'll see later on in this video. Basically, you're utilizing the same swing highs and swing lows that you use to pull your fib retracements, your fib extension levels. So those are two previous tools that we've gone over earlier in this series, videos 2 and 3. But you're utilizing the same swing highs and swing lows for the most part to pull your expansions from as well. So once price moves beyond the range that you are pulling, so essentially the levels that you're using, the fib expansion helps to identify those targets. And again, so just below that, you'll see that we're really only targeting those expansion levels. They only become relevant once the pivot high or pivot low is taken. So once that high that you were measuring gets taken out, then you can look for expansion targets to the upside. If that pivot low, that was basically the first, again, maybe that was, that was your first pull, your first pivot that you were using at the low. And if you're pulling like a bullish Fibonacci retracement for, as an example, and then price actually comes below that first pivot, then you can use that same pull as an expansion to target levels that are below the first pivot. So again, Fibonacci expansions only targeting those expansion levels once those, either the pivot high or the pivot low is taken out. And finally, of course, Fibonacci expansions they're amazing tools to use, like to be able to find confluence with your technical analysis. So again, not really something that you want to be trading solely off of, just like anything else. Obviously you can if you really want to, but I think, again, the type of trader that I am, I really utilize these different tools to come up with areas of confluence to help solidify those specific levels. I want to create a case. I want to create a good argument to take trades at those levels. And Fibonacci expansions are definitely one of those tools in the toolbox to help me do so. So I want to clarify. I want to make sure that this is crystal clear before we get into the examples. And I'm actually going to be using both the Fibonacci retracement and the Fibonacci expansion in this video later, to not only to show you the difference between the two, but also to show you kind of how they play off each other and kind of what I look for before I essentially am like looking for the expansion tool to come into play. But the Fibonacci retracement tool, so again, if you go back to video 2 in this series, the Fibonacci retracement tool is used to find retracement support resistance targets within the two pivots that you select. So once you have the low and the high, for example, if you're looking for a bullish retracement, then you're targeting those levels within that range that you pulled. Whereas the Fibonacci expansion tool, which is again what this video is about, the expansion tool is used to find the support and resistance targets outside the two pivots that you select. So retracement inside, expansion outside. All right, so the Fibonacci extension versus expansion. So if you remember, the extension was literally video 3, the previous video in this series. So the difference between the two, like the main difference that I want you to remember, is that the Fibonacci extensions need 3 pivots to formulate the extension target. So again, 3 pivots needed. You need a low, high, and then a higher low. If you're pulling a bullish fib extension, looking for targets to the upside, or if you're looking for targets to the downside, you need the high, the low, and then the lower high, right? So those 3 pivots, and then you're looking for your extension targets to the downside. Versus the Fibonacci expansion, Again, similar to the retracement in the fact that it only needs 2 pivots to formulate that expansion target. So again, but you have to wait, obviously, until price goes either above or below one of your pivots. So Fibonacci expansion levels. The slide's going to look very similar to a slide that we had in video 3, where I gave the Fibonacci extension levels that I used for the extension tool. So one thing that I want to say very quickly, which is very important, how you get your Fibonacci expansion levels, it's through your retracement tool. So the same tool that we used in video 2 for your Fibonacci retracements, you're going to use that for your expansion levels, and you can create a template that you can kind of easily go back and forth between retracement and expansion. You could have all of your levels on one. I think it gets to look really messy. And I'll show you what I mean when we get into the examples part of this. But again, the expansion levels, you just use the retracement tool and you alter the settings to be able to pull the expansion levels. So same as anything, the other tools that we've gone over, they're automatically, these levels that you see below are automatically calculated once you have your 2 pivots. And these levels are important support resistance levels and take profit targets. So they're definitely, that's probably one of the more important parts of this, is looking for areas to take profits on your, or profit on your trades, or potentially look for a really good entry. And it's also an important tool, very important critical tool needed for trading harmonics, so which we will get to down the road. So some of the expansion levels below, let's go through them very quickly. The 1.133, that is a level that's used in harmonics, so it's a derived ratio, like the 786, 886, 1.272. The 1.272 and 414, those are also in the previous video. They're bot and algo targets. So again, similar reasons to use those for your expansion levels as well. The obvious level, the 1.618, which is it's like the level for the most part, a majority of the time, that you're going to want to be very aware of where that is, because that's a lot of times what you're going to be targeting. And so the 2 extension, it's obviously going to be an important level, as it's the double move. So it's literally a measured move of the pool that you're using. The 2-spot extension is going to be a replica of that move. So that's obviously going to be an important level. The 2.236, which, if you know just from a standard fib retracement, the 236 fib retracement, that's one of the levels. So that's obviously going to be in the retracements that we talked about in video 2. But the 2.236 is a level that's also used in harmonics. So that's one of the ones that I use for my expansion levels. And then, of course, the 2.618, and so on and so forth. So for the most part, with the expansion levels, once I get to the 2.618, I'm mostly interested in targeting like your 3.618, 5.618. So again, sticking to the Fibonacci sequence. So I don't really use the 4.618 because 4 isn't a fib number, right? It goes 2, 3, 5, 8, so on and so forth. So that's typically what I will use. But at that point, I mean, it's kind of rare where you get to a point where it's like the 8.618. Some of those come into play when we get into like Fibonacci time, if you have a really good pull. So obviously it's not this particular topic, but that's how I that's why I put X.618, because that's how I proceed after the 2.618 is essentially surpassed. All right, so it's time for an example. And if you know me by now, I should just put examples because I never have just one. But it's very important for me, obviously, to make sure that that you get as much exposure as you can within a reasonable amount of time to using the tools that I like to teach, because I think it's really important. So I'll have at least a couple of examples for you here shortly. Here is a blank chart. Basically, this is ETH USD. On the daily time frame, and we're just going to kind of use this as our example. So before I get into showing you how to use the Fibonacci expansion tool, I want to go over the settings first, again, that way you can kind of see. So the first thing you're going to do is come over here to the side of your toolbar here, wherever it is, whether it's you have this toolbar up here, which I have a video on how to make this in case you like to have your own toolbar. It'll be your favorites. you're going to select the Fibonacci retracement tool. So if you remember earlier, and you scroll down here, there is, so from video 3, your trend-based fib extension, this is the tool that you would need for video 3. But if you notice, there is no fib expansion tool. That's because it is your fib retracement tool just altered a bit. I'll show you what I mean. So pulling a standard Fibonacci retracement, we can just kind of do it here over the sides. You will see that this looks very much just like your standard Fibonacci retracement. Now, for my Fibonacci retracements, I don't care, and this is just personal preference, okay? So I think if you would look for probably most people's Fibonacci retracement, they wouldn't have this extension in here. I'm sorry, this expansion. And I do it because I always want to know where this is, even if it's not relevant to my analysis. I just like to have the 1.618 there. I just like to know where it comes in at, because a lot of times it'll kind of catch my eye. If it comes at a really important level, then that'll kind of clue me in to say, hey, like if this, so again, and I'm pulling, this is a bullish Fibonacci retracement because you're looking, let's say again, these are going to be your points that you're measuring, right? So once you have kind of your low and your high in, you're going to pull your fib retracement to look for pullback targets, right? So these are going to be your pullback targets. Now, essentially, if I see this level come in at a really interesting level, if there's a ton of confluence there for whatever reason, and the fib expansion, I'm sorry, the Fibonacci retracement tool that I have here, these levels are well respected, okay? So let's say like comes down, you get a bounce off your 382, nice reaction, but it ultimately continues lower, then comes into your golden pocket, gives you another nice bounce, and then it's just kind of like working its way down, right? So I know it's kind of ugly, but eventually once it takes this low here, that's when this comes into play. So this is where your fib retracement turns into a Fibonacci expansion, because now you've broken this lower pivot. So this is what I was talking about earlier in the video. And then if price continues to go to the downside, then you can use this expansion tool to help give you ideas on where there might be future support in this instance, right? So again, or if this was flipped and your 1.618 was up here, then that could be a potential target, potential resistance level, right? So just to, again, there'll be way more examples of that. That wasn't a great one. But just to show you again, kind of when the expansion piece of it comes into play. So this is just a Fibonacci retracement with the 1.618 expansion on it, because I always have this on my fib retracement. I just like to know where it is. Now, so if you go here to your settings, so I just right click, go to settings, go over to style, you can see which ones that I have selected here. A lot of these ones that are on here I don't really use, I just have them checked. But for the most part, I would say the most important ones is going to be, so for your standard fib retracement, it's just going to be these. And then again, I like to have the 1.618 on there, but these are the ones that I'm typically going to have on my standard Fibonacci retracement. So this is your fib retracement, and then this 1.618 would be an expansion, right? In case this low pivot got lost, like I had shown you earlier. Now, in order to change this to your Fibonacci expansion, okay, I'm going to cancel out of this. And I'm just going to show you, all I need to do is right click on this tool. So again, I'm right clicking on this retracement tool, and I'm going to template, and I have my fib expansion template here, which there you can see. So these are the Fibonacci expansion. This is the Fibonacci expansion template that I have. And you see that it goes down. Obviously we're getting into negative territory, but I'm just showing you that like these are the levels that I have on there. It's the same levels that we talked about in the previous slide. 1.133. See all the levels there. So how do you do that? So if you right click this and go to settings, again, you can see that I added all of these settings in. Okay, so if you go to your fib retracement tool, you can check these. You see how I had all these unchecked? So this is your Fibonacci retracement targets. Okay, This is what I mean by if you have your standard fib retracement tool and then you add in all of your expansion targets. Do you see how many levels you have on your chart, or kind of how confusing that is? I don't really like that. And when I'm using the fib expansion, when I'm trying to find the expansion targets, I don't really care so much anymore what the inside of my fib retracement looks like, because we're targeting beyond that, right? So I don't really care so much about what's in here, because all of the analysis that I would have done in here is now, it's already known, right? It's already done and over with. Now I'm looking for expansion, like expanded targets. So I like to uncheck these, but I save this as its own template, as you saw. I save it as my own template because I don't like to have to come and redo this every single time I want to pull expansion targets. So I delete everything. Now you don't have to do that. You can leave it all if you want. Basically everything that's between 0 and 1, all blank now. And all I see are the expansion targets that I want to see. So I don't have to look at any of this anymore. And then, so if you set it up like this, so you can have your Fibonacci retracement template, just like I did. And then I switch over to my Fibonacci expansion template, which is just the fib retracement, just different levels. If you want to do something similar like this, where you don't want all of this, all of the levels in between, you only want your expansion, you just come in here, just like you see, change your levels accordingly, and then go down to this right here where it says template, click it, and then you can write save as. And then you type in the template name. So you could type in fib expansion and then click save. So when you do that, you will now have the fib expansion template saved. So again, if you go to right click this, you should see it line up here. So if I wanted to put my standard Fibonacci retracement back, all I do is go to my template because I have this saved, and then go down to standard, and there you go. With, of course, my 1.618 expansion that I told you, I always have that on my chart. Then go back here to my fib expansion. There's your fib expansion. Doesn't have anything here, so nice and easy. So now that we went over the settings, took a little bit, but I think that's really important. And I wanted to try to save you some time, obviously, on setting all this up for yourself. Now let's use the tool. And I'll go over some scenarios here where you might want to use the Fibonacci expansion. So this is ETH USD on a daily time frame. And I'm just going to try to do a few quick examples here of maybe where I would use Fibonacci expansions, kind of what I would look for. I want to do at least another chart after this, so I'm going to want to spend a whole ton of time on this. But just looking at this price action here, so like just sticking to real, just sticking to stuff that's very relevant to where we're at right now. A couple of expansions, like potential uses of it. I can kind of see, so here, like, okay, so from this pivot low up to this high, you can see I have the expansion tool on. I'm going to actually switch this to a standard Fibonacci retracement. And this is a good example of a tip that I think I want to, like, it's going to be very similar to, I'm going to turn this off just for a second. I'm going to turn this off. I want to turn off the 1.618 because I don't want to confuse anybody. You know why I have that on there. I already explained it, but I just want to stick to this. That way it looks like a traditional Fibonacci retracement and doesn't have any expansion targets on it. Obviously, if you already know why I have that set there. But one of the tips that I want to give is when you're using a standard Fibonacci retracement, like you see here, when the levels are really well respected. So if you go back to video 2 and I kind of talk you through like what I look for, specific levels that I'm looking for reactions. When I see that happening and then the expansion comes into play, I definitely pay a lot more attention to those. So it's very similar to video 3 where I talked about the Fibonacci extension, and it was that golden tip that I gave where if the third pivot comes into a golden pocket, a lot of times the 1-to-1 extension or the 1.618 extension that comes after that, like that, the measured move that comes after that, you'll see is respected really nicely. This is kind of one of those examples. bit of alpha that I'll share here is that a lot of times when you see these same similar fib levels respected on the retracement and they're respected very orderly, once this breaks, so like you see here, price actually broke below this low pivot, so now we're in expansion territory, right? Once that happens, I am definitely more aware of what the expansion targets are, especially the main ones, obviously, like the 1.618. So I just wanted to share that. And so basically here on this example, which this is a major low pivot and obviously all-time high. So these are two critical levels that, once the all-time high is established and you start to see a bit of a pullback here, the high is in and you're looking for retracement targets to potentially, again, take, if you're short, looking for potential take profits. If you're not in a position you're looking for long, then you're looking to long these retracement levels, right? And obviously we're very bullish up here. In kind of like how this is trading out. Obviously it rolled over quite heavily, but looking for retracements off of here makes a lot of sense. So kind of the first region off of this all-time high, you'll see the 382 very well respected, literally right here. And again, you get a really nice reaction, almost makes a new all-time high off the 382. So if you had taken a long position off of this retracement into the 382, that would have been a really good trade on its own. So 382 got respected very well. And then you have this crazy nasty wick to the downside, major washout here, but where did it come into? Wow, so no surprise there. Literally into your golden pocket, and a huge massive move off of that, of course. So again, another nice retracement area, and then it ends up rolling over. Okay, and now you take this low, so now you're in expansion territory. So this is one of those pulls that I think is very relevant, and all I'm going to do is right click it here and go to my fib expansion that I showed you how to make that earlier, and you're going to see the targets to the downside. So again, as long as we're below this pivot here, this expansion to me is definitely relevant. It's one of the, a good way to find confluences at local, or levels below this low pivot here, which you can see the 1.133, pretty well respected, not bad. You just put a line through here just so you can kind of see that. A lot of support in this region on its own. Haven't quite made it down to the 1.272. If you're in VIP, like there's some interesting levels. So these next two levels here, there's a lot of confluence that is in between these levels, and specifically here as well. Hint, negative point of control. But like there's some very interesting analysis that lines up with here, which obviously coming into these major low support areas. Well, but anyway, I don't want to get too far ahead or off topic here. But and this, of course, is like very important. Now it's very far away from where we're at, but if this does roll over and roll over hard, I will definitely would want to be aware of this 1.618, which is way down here, sub 1300. So that's way deep. So that's one example to use a Fibonacci expansion that we're in the process of using, right? You saw the 1.133 get hit quite nicely, and had been like really good support off of that. And then previously, or like lower levels below that if we do, continue to the downside. So that's one pull that I saw right away that I thought was interesting. Another one is from here. Okay, so talking all-time high down to this low pivot. So going back to a fib retracement, and I just want to switch this really fast. Go to your standard. All-time high. And what do we have here? We have definitely a low in, right? This is a major low that's been established so far. So we have two pivots right away that you can pull, and now we're looking for potential retracement targets to the upside, right? So that's kind of like what we're looking for at the moment using the Fibonacci retracement tool. Now, so far off of this low, if you look, price came up into your 236. You definitely got a pretty nice reaction off of that, so that's good to see. Your 382 definitely got a really nice reaction, came above a little bit, but you've had a major pullback off of this 382, which when things are typically really bearish, you'll come back up to your 382 retracement, and then you'll get like a either a full-on reversal or substantial reaction off of that, which you definitely got here. So this structure in itself is absolutely very bearish, and Fibonacci is confirming that as well. But if you're able to find support and continue higher, then you continue to use these levels. Typically, I see this type of reaction off the 382. Yes, the 50% retracement, the 0.5 fib is going to be important, but I'm really looking to here. And I think that this would be a major level, is your golden pocket. So again, this is all future, right? This hasn't happened yet. So this is good to kind of talk this through. I think that you probably find big major resistance around here if price is able to push this way up. Obviously, you want confluence with other other technical analysis as well, but this, in my opinion, probably going to be a very, 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 very important resistance level if it's revisited. So that is your retracement. So that's what we're looking for right now, right? We have our clear high, which is your all-time high. You have a very clear low pivot here, and we're hitting important Fibonacci retracement level. So this is a bearish fib retracement, because we're looking for, again, this is a bearish fib retracement. You have your high, your low, and looking for pullback targets ultimately to possibly, again, continue to the downside. So you have these two major pivots. So what happens if price does this? And continues higher. So we have obviously we have a retracement, Fibonacci retracement. The level's been very well respected. Price came up to your 618, got a nice rejection off of here, ultimately reclaimed it, maybe made a little bit of a pit stop here, 786. Again, this is just an example, but then broke and made new all-time highs. Now what are you going to do? Well, we have expansions, and this, especially again, seeing how these levels were very well respected, hypothetically, of course, if this was to happen, then all you have to do, not all you have to do, but like to get your expansions, right click this, go to your template, hopefully, which we went over in the very beginning part of this, go to Fibonacci expansion, and now you have your expansion targets to the upside, which, by the way, it would be a new all-time high. So now you're in all-time high territory where price has never traded before. Fibonacci expansions are excellent ways to find confluence at levels in which price has never traded. So you could use this in conjunction with pivots. You could use this with fib extensions. Just another tool to look for potential resistance at future prices where prices never traded using Fibonacci. Looking up here, some of the, again, we went over these targets already, but your 1.618 would definitely be an area of interest. So that is using a combination. So again, kind of showing you, first of all, when we're in this range, we're using the Fibonacci retracement tool, right? Because we are looking to trade within this section of price. This is the known price. Again, so our all-time high, our pivot low here. Now we're looking for retracement levels. Once this level is violated, though, okay, then you would be looking for targets to the downside. So same fashion, again, this is just opposite of this earlier example that we did where we were looking for expansion targets to the downside, which we already did. This would be if this pivot low held and price did essentially what I showed here, something of the sort, and you took out this high, then you could look for expansion targets to the upside instead of the downside. So that's basically how you would look to use that. So hopefully that made sense. So let's go look at Bitcoin. We'll look at a different chart and try to see again how we could use expansions over there. So this is Bitcoin USD on the daily time frame. I'm going to try to look for some expansion and kind of we can do the same thing and focus on current price action. Well, current for a daily. So I mean, we can focus on this massive range that we've been in. I mean, we could start back here. I guess there's not that much data. We can just see if there's anything of interest. There was a very interesting. I remember trading this actually. Now I did not. There was just a, I don't know if I want to get into it, but there was some crazy circumstances happening. So I was actually trading on BitMEX at the time. I wasn't trading on Bybit yet, but I was actually trading this drop on the BitMEX chart. Well, I mean, I was trading on BitMEX at the time, but there was a crazy expansion here, and I guess I'll go over that because it's actually a really good one. But if you remember, go back and look at this time. What was happening? Coronavirus crash, March 2020. So here, I remember this. Obviously, we had this breakdown from this symmetrical triangle, essentially break it to the downside, and you had this crazy BART pattern. There was like a lot of BART patterns back then, which, I mean, it's kind of funny. It's kind of coming back into play. I've noticed quite a few more of those just like very recently. But you had this crazy BART down to 7,300, and then this was like the Z candle, right? Something about China, 10,000. We literally had this crazy spike to 10,500. Anyway, it was this time that I remember there being a pretty good expansion. And I'm going to take a standard fib retracement and just go from, again, low to high, just like you typically would. Looking for retracement targets, 236, obviously held up pretty well before that failed. Didn't really get that great of a reaction at 382. Actually, you lost it. You lost your 382, and then it was resistance before breaking down into your golden pocket. And again, not getting a good reaction off of here, especially with this previous drop. And then you have the candle of doom right here, right? Literally like the 1 day crazy candle. And for those of you who don't know, again, the market should be fortunate that BitMEX did what they did and pulled the plug, because if they didn't, Bitcoin probably went a lot lower than this wick would show here. But funny enough, which that's why trading this was actually really, it was pretty crazy, because there, again, not only you have like the exchange where there's like this insane amount of liquidations that's taking place, and there was a lot more that needed to be done, and they ended up pulling the plug. But if you take this into play, you have a very clear definitive low, you have a clear definitive high. We see reactions at the levels that I essentially want to see reactions. That you didn't get a very good reaction into this golden pocket here. So I'll just draw it out just so you can kind of see it. Again, it didn't get like a phenomenal reaction, this golden pocket, but you can see it essentially, you had this massive drop, price hung around here for a little bit, and then just massive candle to the downside. Well, what do you have? You have a major low, you have a major high. Price comes and takes this low out, so you have an expansion, don't you? So if you right click on this and go to your Fibonacci expansion, here's your expansion targets to the downside. What do you notice? That's your 1.618. That was basically the literal low of this move. Nice reaction off of that. Obviously, this was literally the low. So the 1.618, very important level. Massive reversal off of that, and then it was literally all-time highs. So this Fibonacci expansion, wow, right? Really good, giving you targets to the downside on a massive break like this, coming into this major key level. So I thought that was really interesting. So again, this is kind of a trip down memory lane here. But I'm not going to lie. I'm going to sit here and tell you right now, I was longing in this area for a different reason. I did know that this was here, but believe me, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, like, this is when the world was ending. That's what it felt like, okay? When you have a candle like this, where you literally drop from 8K down to sub 4,000 within one candle, like, I mean, I guess technically two, but this was, and I remember this was toward, like, this was literally right after daily open too. This might as well have been the same candle. Okay, this was like one continuous move. But I was taking longs here. Now, I'm not going to get into that whole thing, but again, on BitMEX, there was a very special reason why you might have an edge. Why you might have an edge taking longs around here. And let's just say that it was a little bit difficult to get liquidated. And I don't want to say it was a free ride, but it was a very nice trade. Don't get too much into that. But I'm not gonna lie, after a drop like this, yes, of course you're looking for a snapback. Did I think we were gonna go to new all-time highs after that? No, I didn't. But you know, a snapback trade definitely seemed to be in cards. You just didn't really know like if this was going to be a floor. So I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and say, oh, I called this perfectly. There's no, like, it was terrifying trading this, really. But ended up, again, technical analysis ended up working out very nicely in that case. And then, of course, crazy move off that. But again, this is a lot of fun to be trading this. But at the same time, there was definitely a lot going on. So there's that. Coming into something a bit more recent here. So coming into something a bit more recent, you have this. So like I'll kind of like just focus on this and kind of give you a bit of insight to what I'm looking at. Actually like going forward. Few things here of interest. Obviously you have this previous all-time high and this previous all-time low. So if we just put this on standard, which I always start, this analysis always is going to start off. Let me take a sip of water. But this analysis is always going to start off using the Fibonacci retracement because that's what we're trading off of. You have your high, you have your low. We're looking for retracement targets, right? I'm not looking for expansion targets yet. It's only once this price gets violated, then I'm looking for expansion targets. And as you can see, the 382, incredibly well respected. So right here, look at that reaction you get, 382, flawless reaction off of there. Nice pullback. Obviously, price breaks it, flips into support, continues higher. Where does it continue? Surprise, surprise, surprise. Right into your golden pocket where you get a pretty substantial retracement off of that. So right away, you're like, yeah, this is a killer retracement. So what happens? So this example is exactly the example I gave on the Ethereum chart a bit ago. As prices, again, retracing up through here. Once your all-time high is broken to the upside, you can flip this into a fib expansion. And there you go. You have targets to the upside. So if I scroll up here, you can see that the 1.133 was just barely front ran. So just barely front ran by like a few $100. I mean, it looks so small there, 182. Yeah, I mean like $700 or whatever, $600. But that got front ran, and I personally, I had a short sitting at 69,420 for obvious reasons. That didn't get filled. It was more of a, I'm not gonna lie, it was more of a scalp. I want to see if there, I anticipated a reaction there. Obviously, the high on Bybit was 60. I'm gonna get sidetracked here, but it was 69,182, so that didn't get filled, unfortunately. But the real targets that I was looking for, there's two targets, honestly. So yeah, obviously the 1.618 up here, but the 1.272 and the 1.414, there was actually a lot of confluence here. And unfortunately, I mean, again, price didn't make its way up there, but there was really good confluence looking for these levels. But yeah, obviously price didn't make its way up there. Basically just front ran the 1.133 and then pulled, oh, well, not pulled back, but I mean like obviously retraced significantly from there. But again, the fib expansion, there was great confluence here. Obviously price didn't work its way up, but if it did, I would have definitely been prepared to trade that. And this was one of the tools that I was using to prepare for that. Let's see here. And then let me delete, I don't know where that came from. So that's fib expansion to the upside. One tool here is looking at this. Again, go to your standard, same exercise, okay? When you have a pivotal low here, which is, it's your huge range low support. This is immensely important. You can see we have not come down to retest this again yet. But this is a huge level between basically this pivot low that you see here and about 31K, about that region. Huge macro support. Starting from the top, again, the one that I'm really looking for is the 382. 382, pretty nice bounce off of that. Ultimately rolls over down to where? Figure this out by now. Wick through your golden pocket a little bit, but basically right into this region. Very nice snap back there, and then continues to roll over and makes it all the way down to your 886. So again, like really well respected fib. So what do we have? Well, if price works its way down and we lose this low here, this $28,000 pivot that you have, one thing that you can do to prepare yourself ahead of time now to look for expansion targets to the downside is you turn this pull into an expansion. Now, what do you have? So the interesting thing here, which not to get too much into it, your high was basically a slight front run of the 1.133 expansion that we just showed you. Well, what's the 1.133 expansion to the downside? So again, let's say price does this, kind of like does this game, and then just loses this low, starts working its way down. Well, the same level here that basically called your high was pretty close. The interesting thing about where the 1.133 is for me is that it's at a very big level. So 23K, you're in VIP, you know, we've been talking about 23K for a long time. Same analysis I've given, long time. Short of it is there's a consolidation here. So again, when Bitcoin broke its 20K all-time high, impulse to the upside, spent some time consolidating here right around this 23K. So if we break this major macro structure low, the next real support that you have below that, in my opinion, is going to come in around this 1.133 just from a market structure standpoint. Okay, not just the fib expansion. Again, I'm kind of getting outside of this video a little bit, but I think it's important to demonstrate how you look for confluence as well, not just looking at the Fibonacci expansions, but how to incorporate that in your analysis. So I'll tell you that this for me comes out in a very interesting level, and an interesting level. So again, this is one of the confluences that lie here in between 22 to 24K. So I do think that if Bitcoin was to break this massive structure, I think that you probably get a pretty good reaction off of here. Now, here's the interesting thing. And again, continuing looking forward, if Bitcoin was to break its 20K previous top, that would be really bad, in my opinion. But if it did, your expansion targets to the downside, I think definitely are going to come into play, which I'll tell you this 1.272, 17K, very interesting. So again, looking to the left, so looking at historical price action, looking over here, I think that's very interesting. There's a nice consolidation, reaccumulation that essentially took place right here before another big impulsive move made new all-time highs, of course. So I think very important, very interesting region. 1.414. Now you're getting way deep into this territory, literally like 12K. Again, interesting level. This is basically where like a, I mean, it's a slightly above that, but this is coming back down to like the major like generational long opportunity that you had at 11,300. So just really interesting levels there. And then of course, where's the 1.16? It's probably way down there. Your 1.618 is back at 3,700. But what's interesting, that's the low. Look, so like that is right back here at this low. Okay, so it's interesting how that lines up. Now, do I think Bitcoin is going back to 3,000? No, I don't. I do not think so. Okay, but it's just interesting to me though how this expansion puts you right back at this massive critical level back in 2020. I just think that's really interesting. But again, I think that this Fibonacci expansion targets to the downside become very relevant if we take this low. I definitely think that these are very relevant targets. I think that the 1.133 holds up. Now, again, I'm kind of getting more into analysis versus like teaching you how the expansion tool works. So I'm going to cut it here. But I just want to demonstrate to you again how you can utilize this tool with analysis. So it's not just using the tool. That's great and all. This is how you pull it. This is the numbers you're looking for, and great. I want to take it a step further here, just to kind of show you like why these levels are relevant as well. And again, there's a lot of other analysis that I'm not going to do here because it's outside the scope of this video. But these levels are very interesting. Let's just say where they line up. So hopefully this video was of use and you learned something about Fibonacci expansions, kind of when to use them, how to use them, how to set up your tool, or again, how to set up your fib retracement to be able to have the expansion setting on it if you want. I think that it's definitely worth having. And you should, again, if you want to continue to learn using my teachings that I'm obviously sharing here, these expansions are going to be, they're 100% going to be coming into play in the future for different types of analysis that we're going to be doing. So it's a good idea to not only understand expansions, but get used to incorporating them in your trading. And then when the time comes that I'm ready to do that next module, then you'll see exactly why these and like how these come into play. But again, hopefully maybe you learned something useful here, and just another really awesome tool to use in your tool belt when it comes to just Fibonacci in general. So of course, here's my social media. My Twitter, that's something that, again, if you haven't followed me on there, please follow me. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to build my Twitter rep. You know what I mean? I gotta post more on there. And then obviously my Discord, that's the invite to get into my Discord channel. You're watching this on YouTube, so you already know that. And then the Telegram room as well, where we have a very awesome community, both in Discord and Telegram. I'm probably in Discord 12 plus hours a day. Obviously, I'm mostly in VIP. Any VIPs in there, you can tag me any hour of the day. For the most part, you usually get a very quick response. But yeah, that's where I am. So definitely give me a follow if you haven't already. And if you could like and subscribe, like this video, it really helps out the algorithms, of course, like to push my content out there. I would, from the bottom of my heart, really would appreciate that. And then of course, subscribe and tick the bell to be notified of future content. With that being said, hope you enjoyed this one. Hope you're able to learn something. And we'll see you for the future Fibonacci videos and future modules as well. So with that being said, trade safe out there. We'll see you on the next one.